Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. So far, most of the data type we've seen are storing a single value. For example, a float will store one number, one real number, an integer will store one whole number, and so on. Today we are going to cover a data type that can store multiple values, okay? This data type name is list. So how do I create a list? You start by a variable name like values, then equal sign, then square brackets. Inside the square brackets, you will basically add your values one by one, separated by a comma. For example, assume this is a list of numbers. So I will add 43, 12, and 16, for example. Now I have a list of 3 elements or 3 values. Now, what can I do with this list? You can access individual element. For example, I can print values at position 1, and indexing here works just like in strings. So index start from 0 and end with length -1. So if I print values at 1, I'm going to print the value 12. Of course, you can always print the entire list just by using the variable name like this, and you will have your entire list printed. What else can you do? You can also change individual element. So I can do this by writing values at 2. I want to change the last element, for example, then equal sign, and here I will put the new value 22, for example. Then if I print values, I will see that my list has changed. I changed the last element in the list. Of course, when accessing individual element or when changing individual element, I have to make sure I am within the range, basically. What does that mean? For example, here, if I try to print values at index 4, there is no index 4 here. The last index is 2. So when I run this cell, I will get index error, list index out of range. Same thing when you try to change a value at an index that does not exist, you will still get an error. All right. Now assume you have a list again and you want to visit individual element. Each individual element of the list, you can do this by using the index, right? So print values at 0, values at 1, and values at 2. But can I do this in a more efficient way? The answer is yes, I will use loops. So there are 2 ways to do this with loops. The first way is using a for loop. Remember, a for loop takes a container, right? So the way to write a for loop is you write for, then a variable name like v, then n, then you write a container. And so far we've seen a string. You can use a string as a container, and you can use the range function. Here we will use the list itself. So I will write for v in values, colon, then print v, for example. Now when I do this, I will visit individual element in each iteration by order. Now, can I do this with a while loop? Yes. How can I do this? I need a variable for the index that will start from 0. Then I will say while I is less than, this is similar to visiting individual character in a string. So I will say while I is less than the length of values. I can use the length function with list just as we used it with strings. So while I is less than the length, what do? I'll simply print values at I, basically the element at position or index I from the list value. Now when I run this, notice that I get an infinite loop. The reason is I forget to increment the index. So I have to move to the next index basically in each iteration. Now I get 43, 12, and 16. Now, let's see this problem. So we will have the same list again, and I will basically write scores, another variable name, equal to values. Then I will change the list at values. So I will take the last element from this list, change it to 88. Now, if I print scores, do you think scores will be affected by the change I've done to values? The answer is yes. Scores is actually affected. Notice that scores, the last element in scores, is just the same as the last element in values. As a matter of fact, when you print values, you will see that they are exactly the same list. Now, what is going on here? Let's see. When you write values equal to 43, 12, and 16, what you have inside your memory is the following. So you have your list, which contains 3 elements. And you have a variable name, values, that is storing the address of this list. So this list is in some location in memory. Assume this location has a specific address like 1001. Then values is actually storing 1001. It's not storing the actual list again. So any list in memory, anything in memory will have an address, okay? So this list, for example, is located in certain location in memory. This location has an address. The address we are assuming here is 1001. Values, the variable that basically we use for the list, is storing this address. So in this case, what is the value of values? It is 1001. So when I write scores equal values in this line, what I am storing in scores is not the list. I am storing the address. Okay, so basically we have two variables sharing the same address, and this address is the location of the same list in memory, the list of 3 elements. So when I write values 2 equal 88, when I write values 2 equal 88, what I am doing is I am visiting the list at location 1001. I am looking at the element at the last index and changing it to 88. So again, when I basically write scores equal values, I am just creating another name for the same list. This is one way to think about it. Now you have 2 names for the same list. Okay, one thing you will hear a lot is what you are storing inside values and inside scores is the reference to the list. Okay? Basically, this is a similar idea to the location or the address of the list inside the memory. All right. So whenever you write scores equal values, you are basically just storing the same address inside a different variable, which will basically leads you to have 2 names for the same list. Now, what can I do to actually get another copy of the list? Okay, so here, instead of writing scores equal value, I will come and write scores equal list, parentheses, values. This is called the list function. It will basically give me a brand new copy of the list values, and I will store it inside scores. So when I execute this code, what you get is you print scores. You notice scores is not affected. It is the original list. And when you change the last element in values, you only affect the list values. See, values is changed, scores is not changed. So in memory, you will have, in the first line of code, you will have values storing the location of the list 43, 12, 16. Remember, this is the location of this list. Then I write scores equal list of values. What I am doing is I am creating inside the memory a copy of my list. and this will be in a totally different location. And I am storing now this location inside scores. So when I write values 2 equal 88, what I'm doing is I'm visiting the list on the right. With address 1001, I am changing 16 to 88. Notice the list on the left is still just like what we have in the beginning. It's not affected. All right. Now let's discuss some common operation you will need to know about or to perform on lists. So let's create a new list, and I will call my list here names, and it will be a list of strings. I will have Ali, I will have Ahmed, and Imad. Now, what we get here is a list of 3 strings. Assume you want to add a new name to this list. Now, how can you do this? You can use the method or the function append like this and add the new element, for example, Omar. Now, when I print names, notice that the list has four elements. Also notice that append add the new element at the end of the list. Now, there is another method or another function that allows you to insert a specific element at a specific position. Now, let's take the same list and use this method, which is called insert. You will provide 2 arguments. The first argument is the position or the index you would like to insert the new element in. And the second argument will be the value itself, like Khalid. Now, when I print names, I will print Ali, Khalid, Ahmed, Imad. Notice that Khalid now is in position 1, and all elements are shifted. All elements after Ali basically are shifted 1 position to the right. Now, what else can you do with list? You can check if a certain element is inside the list. How can I do this? You can use the in operator. Okay, for example, I can print Ali in names. This is the same way we check if a certain character is inside a string. Okay, you will use the in operator. Now here I will get true because Ali is indeed an element of the list names. Now, you can also ask what is the index of a specific element. For example, in this case, I can ask what is the index of element Imad, and I will get 2. Now, what will be the case when I ask for non-existing element? See, if I ask, for example, for Omar, you will get a value error because Omar is not in the list. So basically, one way to work around this, instead to avoid the error, is to use n first to make sure the element in the list. Then if it is in the list, then ask what is the index of that element. Okay, now you can also remove elements from a list. Let's take the same list here, and I would like to remove Ali. Now, how will you do this? You will use remove, okay? And you will provide the specific element you want to remove, then print names, and you have the new list now with no Ali. There is another way to remove from a list with a method called pop. Okay, now let's see if you can guess what Bob will do. What do you think? As you might notice, Bob is removing the last element from the list. Now, there is another way to use Bob is by providing a specific index. For example, like this. In this case, you remove Ahmed, right? Because you are removing the element at index 1. So if you provide no index, no argument, you will remove the last one. And if you provide a specific number, you will remove the element at that index. Okay. Now, let's assume you have a list called my friends equal to these three guys, for example, and another list called your friends equal to, for example, Omar and Khaled. Now, I want to create a list, our friends, that is basically the combination of my friends and your friends. Now, you can do this by a simple concatenation, okay? You do concatenation just like you do it with strings using the plus sign. So if you write my friends plus your friends, you will, and print our friends, you will get the combination of both lists. Now, this is an important thing to notice because assume you have a list A equal 1, 2, and a list B equal to 3, 4. If you write C equal A plus B, you will not get 4 and 6. You will not sum individual element. No, you will concatenate both lists and you will get 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so don't confuse concatenation with list addition. Now, what else you can do? You can repeat a list. For example, you can write A equal to 1, 2, 3. Then I write B equal to A multiplied by 3. If I print B, this will be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. This is, again, list repetition. It is not multiplication by a constant. Okay? Now, you can use this to create, for example, a list of zeros, a list of 12 zeros. How can you do this? You create a list with 1 0, then you just repeat that list 12 times. Like this, and now you have a list with 12 zeros. Okay, the last thing we are going to discuss in this video is the following. Assume you have a list A equal 1, 2, 3, and a list B equal to 3, 2, 1. If I print A equal B, basically I'm asking is A the same as B? You might think they have the same element. They must be the same. As a matter of fact, they are different. Because in order for two lists to be equal, they have to have the same element in the same order, okay? So if you write here another list, C equal to 1, 2, 3, and if I print A equal C, in this case, I will get true for A and C. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next